The day Marcus Washington knelt in the dirt at the corner of MLK Boulevard and 5th Street was the day Chicago's South Side learned that royalty doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears rags. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The summer heat rising from Maxwell Street Market wasn't just uncomfortable. It was a living entity that wrapped around your throat and squeezed. At 19, Destiny Moore had become a ghost haunting the narrow corridors between vendor stalls. Her dark skin coated in sweat and grime. Her frame so thin her collarbone jutted like broken wings beneath her torn gray hoodie. She crouched behind cardboard boxes near Miss Ruby's soul food stand, knees pulled tight, trying to disappear into shadows. "Get your nasty behind away from my customers." Miss Ruby's voice cut through the marketplace like a whip crack. "I told you, you smell like the dumpsters. You're bad for business." Destiny scrambled backward, crab walking across hot pavement. She didn't speak. She hadn't spoken more than a handful of words in 7 years, since the fire that ate her memory and left her with nothing but nightmares and the weight around her neck. Her hand flew to the necklace hidden beneath her hoodie, an intricate pattern of jade beads strung on antique gold wire, completely out of place against her poverty. She'd never taken it off. It was the only thing whispering she'd once been someone else. She melted into the crowd, bare feet finding cooler patches between sun-baked sections. The market felt different today, charged with electric tension. Vendors swept streets that never got swept. Chicago PD officers pushed performers off corners with rough hands. "Who's coming through?" a woman asked, clutching her purse. "Marcus Washington. The Marcus Washington. Bought 3 whole blocks. Coming to see the demolition site himself." Ice slid down Destiny's spine despite the heat. She tried pushing towards safer back alleys, but the crowd had become a solid wall, pressing her toward the main boulevard. She was driftwood caught in a riptide. Then the world exploded. It wasn't just sound. It was pressure that hit your chest before your ears registered the wail of sirens. 6 black Escalades tore around the corner, engines growling like predators, flanked by motorcycle cops who slapped car hoods to clear the route. "Move back! Clear the street!" The crowd surged backward in panic. Destiny scrambled toward a delivery truck, but a terrified woman shoved her hard. Destiny's feet slipped on motor oil and crushed fruit. She hit asphalt hard, knees scraping as the convoy screeched to a halt mere feet from where she lay sprawled. Dust swirled, choking and thick. For a heartbeat, everything went silent, suspended between chaos and consequence. The door of the 3rd SUV clicked open. Silence stretched like pulled taffy, heavy with expectation. Then a polished Italian leather shoe touched the dirty Chicago street, somehow remaining spotless. Marcus Washington emerged, rising to his full 6'3" height. He radiated power that Maxwell Street people could only dream of possessing. His deep brown skin glowed with health and wealth. He wore an immaculate charcoal suit tailored so perfectly it looked painted on, his wrist carrying a Patek Philippe worth more than every vehicle in the market combined. He adjusted the jade beads around his own neck, beads mirroring the hidden treasure on the trembling girl yards away, and surveyed the scene with visible distaste. He didn't see people. He saw obstacles to his billion-dollar vision. "Sir, the perimeter isn't secure." His head of security, Jerome, muttered urgently. "The crowd's too thick. We should move you immediately." "Relax, Rome." Marcus's voice was a deep baritone, calm and unbothered. "They're just looking. It's the last time they'll see this place as a slum." Destiny, terrified but unable to move, curled into a ball. She was exposed, lying in the open strip reserved for the billionaire. She squeezed her eyes shut, hand flying to clutch her beads, praying to be invisible. "Get this trash out of Mr. Washington's path," Jerome barked. He didn't wait. He lunged forward, his massive hand clamping down on Destiny's bony shoulder with crushing force. Destiny gasped, flinching as she was hauled upward like a rag doll. She didn't fight. She'd learned resistance only invited harder blows. Her feet dragged uselessly as the security chief prepared to toss her into the gutter. "Please," she whimpered. I'm going. You should have been gone," Jerome growled, winding up to shove her. In the violence of the motion, her hoodie neckline snagged on Jerome's tactical watch. With a sickening rip, the fabric tore open, exposing her collarbone and chest to harsh afternoon sun. The movement froze Marcus Washington mid-step. He'd been turning away when a flash of distinctive jade green caught his peripheral vision. It wasn't the green of street signs or awnings. It was a specific lustrous shade of deep organic jade he hadn't seen in 15 agonizing years. "Stop!" The command thundered from Marcus's chest, so loud it seemed to halt time itself. Jerome froze mid-shove, Destiny dangling from his grip. "Sir, she's just I said let her go." Jerome released her immediately, confusion etched across his face. Marcus stormed forward, elegant grace vanishing, replaced by raw intensity of a father recognizing a ghost. He ignored oil splashing onto $1,000 shoes. His eyes locked on the object swinging against the girl's dark, sweat-streaked skin. It was a necklace of jade beads carved in a distinctive interlocking pattern, a design he'd commissioned from a Chinatown jeweler 19 years ago for his newborn daughter's christening. Each bead was capped with tiny gold lotus clasps. There was only one such necklace in existence. Marcus reached out, his hand trembling visibly, shocking onlookers who viewed him as stone. He didn't touch her skin. He touched the beads, lifting them with tenderness that contradicted the violence. The girl flinched, expecting a blow, squeezing her eyes shut as tears cut clean tracks through dust on her cheeks. "Where?" Marcus's voice broke, the billionaire dissolving into a desperate man. "Where did you get these beads?" Destiny opened her eyes, trembling so hard her teeth chattered. She looked up at the towering figure, terrified by the intensity burning in his gaze. My papa," she whispered, her voice cracking like old glass. "He gave it to me before the fire. He said, I must never take it off." The world tilted on its axis for Marcus Washington. The fire, the home invasion. The night his Kenwood mansion burned and his 4-year-old daughter was taken by a fleeing nanny who never made it to the safe house. He looked at her face, really looked. Beneath the grime, gauntness, and mask of poverty, he saw the curve of her jaw, his late wife's jaw, the shape of her eyes, his own eyes staring back from a face he'd mourned for 15 years. 300 people gasped collectively. It started as a low murmur and escalated into a wave of disbelief as Marcus Washington, the man who owned half of Chicago's South Loop, released the beads but did not step back. Instead, his knees buckled. He didn't fall from weakness. He descended with the heavy, deliberate gravity of a collapsing building. His knees hit oil-slicked asphalt with a wet thud, instantly ruining his custom Italian suit. "Sir." "No, sir." Jerome lunged forward, horrified. "Medic! Get the back!" Marcus roared, swinging an arm blindly to ward off guards without taking his eyes off Destiny. The command was so feral that the security team skidded to a halt, hands hovering near weapons. Marcus placed his manicured hands flat on dirty asphalt, bowing his head until his forehead was inches from Destiny's bruised, dust-caked toes. The silence that followed was absolute, terrifying in its intensity. Destiny pressed her back against rough metal of a vendor's cart, eyes wide with terror surpassing the fear of being beaten. The man was insane, she decided. Rich men went insane when demons came to collect their debts. Slowly, Marcus lifted his head. Tears, unbidden and unchecked, streamed from behind dark sunglasses, forcing him to rip them off and cast them aside. His eyes were red, raw with a decade and a half of grief. I looked in Los Angeles, he choked out, voice thick. I looked in Atlanta. I hired investigators in New York. I dug up leads that went nowhere. And you, his voice cracked, you were sleeping in the streets of my own city. He reached out again, not to the beads, but to her hands. He took her rough, calloused, dirt-stained fingers into his soft palms. Maya, he whispered, using a name she hadn't heard since the smoke stole her memory. My baby girl, my blood. Forgive me. I'm so late. I'm so damn late. The crowd erupted. Whispers turned into shouts of hysteria. Vendors pulled out phones, recording the impossible sight of the real estate king weeping at the feet of the homeless girl everyone had kicked aside. Secure the perimeter. We're compromised. Jerome's voice cut through the emotional haze. The crowd surged forward, driven by morbid curiosity. What had been a sacred reunion was rapidly becoming a security nightmare. Marcus rose, ignoring mud and oil clinging to his ruined pants. He stripped off his suit jacket and wrapped it around Destiny's shivering shoulders, covering her torn hoodie with fabric that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She flinched at the sudden weight, overwhelmed by expensive cologne and crisp cotton, stark contrast to the stale smell of refuse she'd grown accustomed to. I can walk, Destiny stammered, legs shaking violently. I don't want trouble. You'll never walk these streets as a ghost again, Marcus vowed, his voice vibrating with terrifying resolve. He didn't wait for permission. He swept her up into his arms, cradling her against his chest. She was alarmingly light, a featherweight burden of hollow bones and malnutrition that made fresh fury rise in his throat. The security team formed a tight wedge, clearing a path to the escalade. Back! Give way! Marcus carried her to the open door, moving as if he carried fragile crystal through a war zone. The interior was a different universe. Cream leather, plush carpeting, and cool air conditioning that instantly chilled the sweat on Destiny's skin. He placed her gently on the seat, not caring how grime-smeared pristine upholstery. He climbed in beside her and pulled the heavy door shut. The outside world, the shouting, engines, chaos was instantly cut off, replaced by hermetically sealed silence. Destiny pressed her spine against the door, eyes wide, looking at the man who claimed to be her father. She was trapped in a glass box watching the market blur as the convoy accelerated. Drive, Marcus commanded, his hand gripping hers so tight his knuckles turned pale. Take us to the Lakeshore estate. Call Dr. Harrison. Tell him to meet us there. Now. The convoy arrived like a military operation. The massive wrought iron gates swung open silently, admitting vehicles into a world that existed in a completely different dimension. Here there was no dust. The air smelled of manicured rose gardens, Lake Michigan breeze, and the sterile scent of extreme wealth. As the Escalade halted in front of the limestone mansion, the contrast was violent. Destiny looked out at the pristine circular driveway and felt her heart hammer against her ribs. She was a stain entering a museum. Marcus opened the door. He extended his hand, and Destiny took it, her fingers leaving faint muddy prints on his palm. As she stepped out, the oversized jacket trailed behind her like a cape. She took one step and nearly collapsed, legs turning to water, not from exhaustion, but from sheer vertigo of scale. The house wasn't a home. It was a monument. "Welcome home," Marcus said, the words heavy with promise. The double doors swung open, revealing a foyer dominated by a curved double staircase and a chandelier that looked like frozen lightning. The floor was polished marble so reflective Destiny could see herself, a wild, ragged creature standing next to a god. "Mrs. Patterson." Marcus's voice boomed through the hall. A dignified black woman in an elegant pantsuit materialized, followed by two younger staff members. She stopped abruptly, eyes widening as she took in the scene. "Mr. Washington," she gasped, "prepare the master suite, the one we kept locked." "But sir, that room is for Maya, my daughter." His voice cracked. "The owner has returned. Open it." The master suite was a time capsule sealed for 15 years. It was a 4-year-old's fantasy frozen in time. A canopy bed draped in gauzy white fabric, shelves lined with dolls, and a rocking horse carved from cherrywood. Destiny stopped at the threshold. I can't sit there," she whispered, terrified she'd contaminate it with her existence. "You'll sit where you please. It's yours," Marcus said softly. Dr. Harrison burst in, a lean black man in his 50s carrying a worn medical bag. He stopped short, professional mask slipping as he took in the emaciated figure huddled on the velvet chaise. "Clear the room," Harrison ordered. "Marcus, you two." "I'm not leaving," Marcus stated, crossing his arms. Harrison didn't argue. He approached Destiny slowly, hands visible. "Hello, sweetheart. I'm Dr. Harrison. I'm just going to look at your hands. Okay?" As the doctor worked, peeling away layers of grime with antiseptic wipes, the room fell into suffocating silence. With every layer removed, a map of suffering was revealed. Marcus watched in horror as wipes turned black, unveiling old burn marks, jagged scars, and the rope-like texture of severe malnutrition. But when Harrison lifted the hem of the jacket to check her ankles, the air left the room. Her ankles were swollen, marked by deep circular indentations, scars that could only have come from being restrained with chains for extended periods. Marcus let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob, turning away to punch the wall. The sound of his fist hitting plaster cracked the silence. "She's severely dehydrated, critically anemic, and shows signs of long-term trauma," Harrison murmured. "Marcus, this isn't just poverty. This is systematic abuse." Inside the bathroom, the air was thick with steam and expensive bath products. Mrs. Patterson stood trembling by the oversized tub. "Gently," she whispered. "She's not a doll. She's flesh and blood." When the torn hoodie and stained jeans were carefully peeled away, Destiny stood shivering, ribs counting themselves against her skin. "Is the water hot?" Destiny asked, voice barely audible. "Miss Ruby used to pour hot water on the stray dogs." Mrs. Patterson let out a strangled sob. "No, baby. It's warm, like sunshine." They guided her into the tub. As Destiny sank into water, a cloud of dark sediment bloomed, turning pristine rose-scented foam into murky gray soup. She sat rigid, expecting burn, but instead warmth enveloped her frozen core. Mrs. Patterson took a soft sponge, lathering it with soap. She began to scrub. Years of street grime began to slough off. As gray water washed away, the girl's true complexion emerged. A rich, luminous deep brown hidden under a mask of survival. "You're beautiful," one of the staff whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You look just like Mrs. Washington." The grand dining room was a cavern of dark wood and soft lighting. Destiny sat dwarfed by the high-backed chair, wearing silk pajamas that felt like water against her scrubbed raw skin. She stared at the spread, mountains of fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, and felt nausea rise. In the market, food was war. Here it was displayed like art, vulnerable and exposed. Marcus sat to her right. He watched her pick up the heavy silver fork, hand trembling. "You don't have to use the fork, Maya," Marcus said softly. "This is your house. You eat however you want." Destiny didn't look up. Slowly, her eyes darted to the staff by the doors. The instinct kicked in. In a blur, she snatched the chicken leg, but instead of bringing it to her mouth, her hand shot under the table. She shoved the greasy, hot meat deep into the pocket of her silk pajama pants. Marcus froze. "Maya?" Marcus asked, voice cracking. "Baby, what?" She flinched, pulling her hand back up, empty and glistening. "For later," she whispered, eyes wide and terrified. "For when you tell me to leave. I need to save it." The sentence hit Marcus like a physical blow. He realized the bath had washed away dirt, but it hadn't touched the wiring of her survival. Marcus stood slowly. He picked up the entire platter of chicken from the center of the table and placed it directly on her lap. "Look at me," he commanded, voice thick with emotion. When she finally met his gaze, he gestured to the room. "You will never have to hide food again. If you want to fill your pockets, fill them. But no one is sending you away. You're not a guest here, Maya. You own this house." He took a piece of chicken and bit into it with his bare hands, grease dripping onto his expensive shirt. "Please, just eat." The heavy oak doors of Marcus's private study clicked shut. Here, the air was climate-controlled and smelled of leather and cold justice. Marcus poured himself a glass of bourbon but didn't drink it. He just stared at the amber liquid. "Talk," Marcus commanded. From the shadows, Jerome stepped forward, exhausted, clutching a tablet. "We ran a retrospective trace, sir. Pulled city surveillance footage. Also interrogated Miss Ruby." Marcus turned slowly. "She knew," Jerome said. "She didn't know the girl was your daughter, but she knew Maya wasn't just a stray. 15 years ago, a woman dropped the child at the market. Paid local gangs to make sure she stayed in that zone but didn't die. Just existed." "The nanny," Marcus hissed. "Yes, sir. Keisha Brooks. We thought she died in the ambush." Jerome tapped the tablet, projecting bank statements into the air. "But dead women don't open offshore accounts 3 days after a kidnapping. Keisha's alive. Living in Atlanta under the name Kendra Black, running a chain of high-end bakeries." The silence was louder than screaming. "She's in Atlanta?" Marcus asked, voice deceptively calm. "Yes, sir. Hosting a charity gala tonight. For homeless youth." Marcus picked up the bourbon glass and hurled it against the wall. Crystal shattered with a violent crash. "Prepare the jet. I want her picked up. Not arrested. Picked up." Bring her to the holding room in the basement. I want to ask her personally how much my daughter's life was worth." Jerome nodded grimly. "And the sponsor?" "She'll tell us," Marcus promised. "She'll tell us everything before sunrise." The basement was a windowless concrete cube, soundproofed and cold. Keisha Brooks, known to Atlanta society as Kendra Black, sat zip-tied to a steel chair. Her transformation from Charity Gala belle to prisoner was jarring. The steel door hissed open. Marcus walked in alone. No guards, no weapons, just a small velvet pouch. He pulled a chair opposite her, sitting with terrifying calm. He simply reached into the pouch and pulled out the faded, dirt-encrusted jade necklace. He placed it gently on the metal table between them. Keisha stopped breathing. Her eyes bulged, fixed on the beads as if they were radioactive. I can explain," she croaked. "Explain," Marcus said, voice barely a whisper. "Explain how you took a 4-year-old child and dropped her in Maxwell Street Market like garbage." "I couldn't kill her," Keisha blurted, tears streaming. "He told me to kill her. Said if there was an heir, he could never claim the business. I couldn't do it. So I hid her. I thought she'd just disappear." "Who?" Marcus's question was a blade. Keisha clamped her mouth shut, shaking her head violently. "He'll kill me." Marcus leaned forward, face inches from hers. "Look at me. You're worried about a man? I'm the father who found his child eating scraps off the street. There is no hell worse than what I'll bring to you if you don't give me a name." Keisha sobbed, resistance crumbling. She slumped in the chair, defeated. "Raymond," she whispered. "Your brother, Raymond Washington." He said Maya stood in the way of his inheritance. Marcus sat back, air leaving his lungs. His own blood. The brother who'd held him at Maya's funeral. The betrayal wasn't just a knife in the back. It was rot in the family tree. He stood, picking up the beads. He tapped the intercom on the wall. "Jerome," he said, voice void of emotion. "She confessed. Record it. Hand her to the authorities." He paused. "Then send the team to my brother's penthouse. Wake him up." 3 months later, the scar on the earth where Maxwell Street Market had stood was gone. In its place rose the Maya Washington Community Center, a structure of glass and hope that reflected the Chicago sky. A massive stage had been erected at the base, draped in jade green and gold. The crowd was different this time, a mixture of the city's elite and the market vendors who'd once chased a beggar away. Marcus stood at the podium, looking younger than he had in years. His brother Raymond was gone, awaiting trial. Today was about restoration. 15 years ago, Marcus's voice boomed, I came to this ground to build a monument to my success. Instead, I found the foundation of my life. He turned to the heavy curtains behind him. People of Chicago, I don't present to you a survivor. I present to you the future, the rightful heir to the Washington legacy. The curtains parted. Maya Washington stepped into the sunlight. The transformation was absolute. In her place stood a young woman of striking poise, her skin glowing with health. She wore a dress of deep jade green that shimmered like liquid emerald, her hair styled in an elaborate crown of braids woven with jade beads. She walked to the front of the stage with steady, practiced grace. She spotted Miss Ruby in the crowd, the woman's face a mask of shame and awe. Maya didn't flinch. She held the woman's gaze until the vendor lowered her eyes in submission. Marcus stepped to her side, holding a velvet cushion. On it sat a crown made of interwoven jade and gold, her mother's crown, kept in a vault since the funeral. "My daughter," Marcus said, "you survived the fire. You survived the streets. You survived the silence. This city is the least you deserve." He lifted the crown with both hands and placed it gently on her head. It was heavy, a physical reminder of legacy and responsibility. But Maya's neck did not bend. She stood tall, spine straight, absorbing the weight like she'd been born for it. She reached up, touching the cool jade stones, then moved her hand down to the old faded necklace she still wore beneath her dress. The one link between the girl who'd slept under vendor tables and the woman who now owned the block. For the first time in 15 years, she smiled. Not a shy, fearful twitch, but a radiant, blinding expression of victory. She leaned into the microphone, her voice steady, echoing off the glass building. "I am Maya Washington," she declared, "and I am finally home." The applause that followed didn't just break the silence. It shook the city. But Maya wasn't finished. She raised her hand, and the crowd quieted. "For 15 years, I lived invisible," she continued, voice gaining strength. "People stepped over me. They cursed me. They told me I didn't belong. And you know what? They were right." The crowd murmured, confused. "I didn't belong in that place of survival and scraps. I didn't belong in that space of fear and hunger." Her eyes swept across the audience, landing on the vendors, the street kids, the people who knew what it meant to be invisible. "But neither do you." She gestured to the building behind her. "This isn't just a community center. This is a promise. Every kid sleeping in cardboard tonight, every mother choosing between rent and food, every person this city has forgotten, this building is yours. Free job training, free meals, free legal services, free health care." Marcus stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "They tried to erase me," Maya said, voice dropping to something fierce and intimate that somehow carried to the back. "They chained me. They starved me. They made me believe I was trash." She touched the jade crown on her head. "But you can't kill a legacy. You can't erase bloodlines. And you damn sure can't destroy a daughter who learned to survive in hell." The crowd erupted. Not just applause, but shouts, cheers, the kind of raw emotional release that comes when people see their own pain reflected and redeemed. Maya looked down at her father, the man who'd knelt in the dirt for her. "Thank you," she whispered, the microphone not catching it. "Thank you for never stopping. Thank you for finding me." Marcus pulled her into an embrace, and the photographers went wild. But in that embrace there were no cameras. There was just a father and daughter, separated by 15 years of grief, finally made whole. 6 months later, Maya Washington sat in the corner office of the Maya Washington Community Center, reviewing scholarship applications. Her office overlooked Maxwell Street, or what used to be Maxwell Street. The vendors had been relocated to a modern, covered market space built into the first floor, with fair leases and proper infrastructure. She still wore the jade necklace. She'd never take it off. A soft knock interrupted her concentration. "Come in," she called. Mrs. Patterson entered. "Miss Washington, you have a visitor. She says she knew you before." Maya's heart stuttered. "Who?" "A woman named Ruby Jenkins. I know who she is. Send her in." Miss Ruby entered slowly, clutching her purse like a shield. She was smaller than Maya remembered, diminished, as if shame had physically shrunk her. "Miss Washington, Ruby's voice cracked. I came to apologize. I came to tell you that You told me I smelled bad. Maya interrupted, voice neutral. You said I drove away customers. You threatened to pour hot water on me. Ruby flinched as if struck, tears spilling down her cheeks. I did. Lord, forgive me, I did. And I came here to say I'm sorry, even though sorry ain't enough. It'll never be enough. Maya stood, walking around her desk. She studied the woman who'd haunted her nightmares. You're right, Maya said quietly. Sorry isn't enough. Ruby nodded, turning to leave, broken. But it's a start. Ruby froze. Maya gestured to the chair. Sit down, Miss Ruby. I want to talk to you about something. The older woman sat hesitantly, confused. I'm starting a program, Maya explained. Training vendors in business management, helping them expand, get proper licensing, access capital. I need someone who knows the market inside and out. Why would you want me? Ruby whispered. Because you learned, Maya said simply. Because you came here. Because the woman who told me I was trash is now sitting in my office, crying real tears, seeing me as human. That's growth. That's the kind of transformation this center is built on. She slid a business card across the desk. Think about it. And Miss Ruby, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Ruby took the card with trembling hands, staring at Maya with something like awe. You're really something, child. Your mama would be proud. After Ruby left, Maya returned to the window, watching the sunset paint the Chicago skyline in shades of amber and gold. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Dinner tonight? Your pick. She smiled, typing back. Soul food, but the fancy kind. I've earned it. His response was immediate. You've earned everything, princess. See you at 7. Maya set down her phone and touched the jade beads around her neck. One hand on her past, one hand building her future. She'd been a ghost. She'd been invisible. She'd been erased, chained, and forgotten. But she'd survived. And now she was exactly where she belonged. Finally, beautifully, powerfully home. The end.